Thank you. We have time for a couple of questions from the audience. If you could catch my eye and then introduce yourself and frame whatever you have to say with a question mark at the end. Yes, please. Who has microphones in the audience? Who's dealing with the microphones? No one? Sorry. There we go. Thank you. Yeah.
May I? Okay. My name is Tadeusz Luty. I'm advisor to Mayor of the city of Wrocław and the former chairman of the Polish Rectors Conference. Mr. General, I would like to ask about your opinion concerning the role of scientists in diplomacy. There is, of course, already a good example when President of the United States has sent some distinguished scientists to countries like Egypt 2 or 3 years ago to promote the better education, better research facilities in the countries like, as I said, example, Egypt, but also other Arabic countries. Now, do you see in the future this particular role of a scientific community from other countries as well? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the answer to that is absolutely. I believe that we have a moral imperative to use science to bridge the gap between, as I said, the haves and the have-nots. We have, for example, serious energy challenges in the globe. We have serious water problems that are going to be upon us and that are upon us in certain areas of the globe. On energy, we can use our science and technology to help the developing countries to skip a generation, the fossil fuel burning generation, if you will, to arrive at clean energy solutions which will help the climate and the quality of life of everyone around the world. So I think my point would be that as we reach out to different countries and help them where they need help in the ways they need it, and again, it's not one size fits all. It's a prescription for certain areas, for certain regions, for certain countries. But the role that the scientific community can play, I think, in bridging that gap and bringing us closer together, and bringing that feeling of hope that there is a better future for themselves, will be dependent on our ability to integrate a large measure of our international capabilities, and that would include the scientific community, by all means.
I see a question right here.
My name is Alina Belska, and I have a question about, you mentioned that there will be more challenges in a difficult security environment. Do you see, or what would you prefer to see, military taking on more civilian tasks, or actually civilians being willing to go into more difficult and complex security environments?
Good question. Military taking on more civilian tasks, civilians willing to go into dangerous environments.
Yeah, I think I think the way I would characterize it, and that is a very good question, because it's essentially gets at the heart of the problem on how we do things and how we organize ourselves. I believe that the world that we face today, and all the speed and the rapidity with which things come at us, and the different nature of the challenges and the threats, argues for more proactive engagement than reactive. We come out of a 20th century that is fairly defensive and reactive, and in which the dominant response piece was the military. The 21st century, I think, is more sophisticated than that. While the military, I think, will still play a big role, perhaps a big initial role in those areas where pure security challenges have to be addressed. Unless we organize ourselves in such a way that other remedies can also be applied at the same time, involving NGO communities, involving the private sector, involving the private sector understanding that when they come into an area and start developing it, whether they're producing oil or looking for gas or working in some major economic field, that there's a responsibility there as well to leave the area better than you found it by building schools and building roads and making sure the local community is hired. So the private sector, the NGOs, all of these organizations working together can affect in a positive way the outcome of what we seek to achieve. So it has to be a more holistic approach to things. I doubt that the military alone will be able to do all of those things that are required, because obviously these are time-consuming things. And in many ways, these are going to be international packages as well, because we all live in difficult economic times, but there are rising economic powers on the globe that have not been called on to participate in these global issues. And one of their responsibilities, and I think particularly about China and India and Brazil, is to join the family of nations to act responsibly, to bridge the gap between the haves and the have-nots in creative ways that perhaps we've never seen before.
Thank you. Do I see a question here? Let's take two more. There's one here, and then there's. Let's take those three, and then we'll close off. These three.
Good morning. My name is André Lameiras. I would like to ask General Jones. We are facing in Libya for the last 4 months, since February, this spreading of the Yasmin revolution. And actually, NATO is being told as being slow in its processes of actually acting in different situations. But wasn't it, this is the first part of my question, wasn't it this time maybe faster than actually more efficient than it should? And aren't we actually, because we are facing in Libya a country that is divided in two parts. We have Tripoli, we have Benghazi. We have Gaddafi that doesn't want to go out anyway. Is this NATO action in Libya efficient, or should we start doing it in another way? Thank you very much.
I'm going to take these last two questions, please. One here.
All right, a very short one on a very difficult topic. General, I would like to, Łukasz Kulesa, my name is Łukasz Kulesa. I'm an expert at National Security Bureau. General, I would like to draw on your experience regarding Afghanistan. The United States is about to deliver on the promises made by President Obama at the West Point speech regarding some form of droning down the number of troops. How do you see the situation over there? How do you see the US and the NATO strategy in Afghanistan? Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then the last one, please, up at the top.
General Eugeniusz Smolar, Polish Institute for International Affairs. There is, among the allies, there is a bit of a disquiet concerning privatization of military effort. That means the involvement of private companies which do the things which normally have been done by national military services. Could you comment how the things, in your view, will develop in the case of the United States, since this is not very much the case in Europe?
And sorry, the question is
about the role of private companies,
private contractors.
Private contractors.
So we've got Libya, and particularly focused on could we not be more efficient? And I read within that, should we have not got Gaddafi by now? On Afghanistan, I think I read in that question, this question of withdrawal, how fast, how quick, and then in this question, are we outsourcing too much to contractors?
Well, on Libya, as I said, I think that there have been some things that were well done. I think it was critical that the Arab League be involved and still be involved. Critical that the African Union play as dominant a role as it possibly can. But I think that NATO's actions in Libya are consistent with how NATO does things. NATO is reluctant to do anything without a UN mandate. It takes the mandate seriously. It does pretty much what the mandate asks it to do. If there is more to be done or a different way to do it, then the mandate should change. That's not for NATO to arbitrarily change the mandate. So that aspect of it, I think, has been reasonably well done. But the fact is that the longer that Gaddafi stays in power, obviously the more questions will be asked as to the validity of the strategy. And of course the success of NATO. I think there's still more to be played out here, but I think for now, you know, we're about where we expected to be, and we'll let this thing play out a little bit longer. There's only so many things that we can control, but fundamentally, the process is the mandate. If NATO is to do more, the mandate has to change. With regard to Afghanistan and Pakistan, I don't think you can have a discussion about either one without mentioning the other. But where Afghanistan is concerned, we had a very successful NATO summit in Portugal. The year 2014 was adopted as a very transitional period, at which time President Karzai would get his wish, which is to control every aspect of the major issues in his country, including security. Over the past 18 months, we have seen a dramatic rise in the number of, in the composition of the Afghan National Army. We've seen the creation of an Afghan military academy, training centers. The security situation has improved, at least in those areas that we were most concerned about a year and a half ago. And there's no question in my mind that President Obama, in conjunction with his partners, other leaders of countries that are engaged in Afghanistan, will meet his commitment with regard to some withdrawal numbers to be determined, but some beginning of a withdrawal this year, as he had indicated 18 months ago. The worrisome piece in Afghanistan, of course, for me, is not so much Afghanistan as it is Pakistan, where safe havens continue to prolong the conflict and allow insurgents freedom of access across the borders. And it's very worrisome to me that Pakistan has not come to grips, despite the many entreaties and the many conferences and the private visits.
You personally, frequently.
And others,
Yep.
To persuade them that there's a better future for Pakistan by publicly and demonstrably rejecting the idea that terror has any role in foreign policy of any particular country, or the tolerance for terror, and that they would begin to move against the safe havens and the terrorist networks that are alive and well within that country, because fundamentally it's a threat to that country. And I think we're already seeing, I think just recently there were some Taliban-inspired attacks in Pakistan, and I think that's
No closer with Pakistan on that than we were a year ago, 6 months ago.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it's difficult to understand. We have to continue to try. I think this is something that the world should be very concerned about. Another attack, terrorist attack in India or in any one of our capitals would bring about very, very strong consequences for Pakistan. And this is not in Pakistan's national interest, and to continue this way. And the longer they continue this way, the less chance we have of being successful in Afghanistan, unfortunately.
And the private contractor question.
Well, the private contractor question has proven itself to be something that has both good and bad qualities to it. Where they're good, they're very good, and where they're bad, they're a real problem. In both cases, though, they're very expensive. There's no question about the financial aspect of these things. And when you use private contractors in these kinds of long-standing operations, you have to be very careful about monitoring the expenditures, because it tends to grow, and it becomes extremely expensive. In my view, there's a role for it, but I think perhaps that we've gone a little bit too far in our dependence on contractors.
Down to our last 3 minutes, so I'm going to raise two very brief questions, and if you could briefly answer. The first is shale gas. You're an energy expert. Is shale gas a geopolitical change agent? Will it change geopolitics? And the second is, what is the most important thing you learned acting as National Security Advisor?
Well, I think the good news on the energy front, from a national perspective, is that I believe that if we in the United States can properly organize ourselves, prioritize once and for all just how important energy is to our national security, make some key reforms in our administration and how the Department of Energy itself addresses the totality of the national energy portfolio, that we make some reforms in our legislature as to the oversight of national security. The good news is, I think, that with some more work on technology, that there are energy alternatives that will reduce our dependence on imported oil. Actually, you could probably say that the United States could be a net exporter of gas in the not too distant future, and that the promising technology as it addresses shale and sands could transform our energy structure, and the way in which we are now reactive instead of proactive.
And Poland as well.
And Poland as well. And so I think there's great promise here, and this is a matter of not only national security but international security as well.
And what the most important thing is that you learned serving as National Security Advisor?
Well, I think I touched on that a little bit. I think it's extremely important, if you're the U.S. National Security Advisor, to make sure that the National Security Council functions the way it should, and that is to stay strategic and to, as much as you can, try to anticipate what is going to happen down the road. I took great satisfaction in spending a lot of time working with fellow national security advisors on a constant basis, whether in them visiting Washington, me visiting different capitals. But the national security aspect of overall security is that it encompasses everything. And the national security portfolio of our countries just in the last 20 years has changed. I found myself involved in export control reforms as a national security issue, for example. I found myself involved in cybersecurity as a national security issue. The war on terror goes without saying. But climate issues even move into national security issues. And to be able to participate in a network of fellow national security advisors, foreign ministers, defense ministers.
The power of personal relationships.
The power of personal relationships, the willingness to listen and to look at things as other people look at them. We don't all look at things the same way. It's important to understand different views. It's important to understand other countries' politics, so that that when you think it's an obvious time to move, it may not be a good time for a key friend, an ally. Having a global perspective is really, I think, dominant. And since national security in the United States, the National Security Council drives a lot of the interagency process, having a strategic gravitational pull towards the middle is extremely important. And the better informed the National Security Advisor is about the whole totality of what constitutes national security issues, including economic issues in this very different century, is, I think, very important.
Thank you, General Jones. Before I thank you on behalf of the audience, let me just say that the next panel coming up, which will be moderated by my friend Janusz Reiter, will be right after this, so hold your seats, and they'll come right up and get started right away. General Jones, the reason I brought up the personal relationships, I have heard from all over the world of how much people valued the personal relationship with you, and how you had open doors to all over the world, to all sorts of different leaders who trusted you and who engaged with you. On behalf of the audience, I want to thank you for coming to Wrocław, taking this time for us. We know it's a long way to come. But also, I want to thank you at the same time for your service to the United States, to the Transatlantic Alliance, and to the world. Thank you, sir.